Welcome to Native Calgarian and Mossy for listening. I'm your host, Michelle Robinson, speaking to you in Mohkinstsis in the Blackfoot Confederacy, home of the Niitsitapi, Tsuut'ina Dene, and the Yiharhi Nakota. I talk about history, current news, unheard news, book clubs, with special guests to give local or national issues a voice through an urban Saatu Dene lens. My life's work will be to honor the voices of my ancestors and next generation with humor, love, and truth. Reconciliation is work, not performance. May we honor all Indigenous voices with that courage. Today is September 21st, 2025. Welcome to Native Calgarian. If you enjoy hearing Indigenous content by the Saatu Dene woman, my Patreon account is Native Calgarian, where you can pledge and support. Thank you, previous donors, for showing your support. For those who cannot afford to give, I'd love to hear from you at nativeyyc@gmail.com, or you can send in your comments or questions. Also, giving a review helps whatever medium you're listening from. I have a YouTube channel that you can go and subscribe. Go to nativecalgarian.com for the latest podcasts and pin posts on social media. And always remember to share the things you've learned to your network. Oki, nagana go, meko che stokoma oki, nara dago de kots nego tene siku seradi. My name is Red Thunder Woman. My married English name is Michelle Robinson, and I use they, them pronouns. My Dene lineage roots me in the land of the Great Bear Lake tribe in Treaty 11 in Dene. I'm native to Turtle Island, and my Dene nation is uninvited to this area of Clincho Tine Indahe in Saatu Dene, meaning Many Big Dog Town, named after the Calgary Stampede. I was born in Calgary or in Blackfoot, Mohkinstsis, as Michelle Elliott. This is an English name that has afforded me privilege in an English colonial world. Acknowledging proximity to whiteness is important because the darker the skin, the more racism a person experiences in colonial spaces. My late great-grandfather is Milo Bewell from Dene. His daughter Alice is my now late granny. My mother and I are Northern Slavey Dene or Saatu Dene, but my Indian Act and Post status card by the Canadian government says Yellowknives Dene. Through my father, I am a daughter of the Mayflower and a daughter of the American Revolution. Having a Canadian Indian Act and Post status card is a colonial construct by Canadian policies meant to divide Indigenous peoples' inherent rights. Indigenous Two-Spirit or the 2S LGBTQ community and Indigenous women are at the bottom of the Canadian socioeconomic ladder because of colonial trauma, poverty, racism, gendered violence, and land theft by Canada. I'm not a social worker nor an elder, nor do I speak on behalf of all Indigenous people. I just share my journey as a ADHD Dene mom navigating this colonial, racist, misogynistic world in 2025. Land Back is a movement that could save the planet from climate change created by colonialism, but it would be a part of a treaty partnership, part of meaningful reconciliation, honoring initiatives like the United Nations Declaration of Rights of Indigenous Peoples. As a former drafter, I'd be happy to teach you more about that, but you have to go to nativecalgarian.com to learn more. I think of all of this today, and I hope we honor the many Indigenous lives lost for this British Westminster system named Canada. I hope you see your role in the importance of stopping harm, and as a citizen, see your role in reconciliation as a treaty partner. So I think today is going to be my last podcast, possibly ever. So I want to say thank you first and foremost to everybody who has ever listened to my podcast. I want to thank anyone who ever gave, whether it was $5 or $10. This is not financially sustainable. Unfortunately, we are in a place, and anyone who has listened to my podcast knows that I don't make money at this. I have a really good friend who I want to do well, a white male, and he makes $5,000 a month being able to do this, and I am not making that at all. And in fact, I'm struggling financially, so I'm going to have to probably put an end to all of this for many multiple reasons. This, as well as my finally mother's hip surgery has been scheduled, so I just don't have time to put the energy towards this podcast as I would like to. The weekly podcast has been ongoing for years now, and I'm honored to do it. So, what I will do for the next few weeks is release the book clubs that we had recorded, and I've been saving them for the surgery, and so we'll put those up. I'll continue with the book club and reconciliation action group, but that's the only areas that I can put my energies towards right now as I go through these family issues. And so I just wanted to give folks the heads up. And obviously, because of the things that have been happening in our world the last few weeks, I thought it was really important that we talk about an Indigenous Canadian perspective on fascism. Um, it's today is September 21st. And that means tomorrow's Treaty 7 Day, which most people have no idea the significance of that. They don't care. They won't put effort towards that. And that is the worst feeling in the world. I wish people understood they were treaty partners. I met the mayor of St. Albert yesterday, and she scolded me for using the acronym MMIW because, people don't know acronyms. So that said a lot to me about St. Albert's anti-racism training. It said a lot to me about their Indigenous education. And then she scolded me again to say that she's on my side. And I was at an event yesterday at the legislature and watched white people purposely not cheer, not acknowledge that they're treaty partners. And I know they are not interested in listening to Indigenous voices nor amplifying Indigenous voices. The organizers of the event were, but unfortunately, we're in a moment in time, thanks to the last few weeks of things happening, that Indigenous voices are absolutely going to be drowned out completely so that everybody's little pet projects can have more, face time. And Indigenous people will be patted on the head, scolded to sit on the sidelines and let the adults work. And that's what we've been seeing since the Mark Carney government has come in. I can't say this clearer enough for all Canadians. You exist because of the boot on the Indigenous people's neck. The Indian Act has always existed. You have always gotten all of the governance, all of the profits, all of the exploitation, whereas we have not. Um, People regularly message me or say shitty comments on my stuff and are never challenged with their ignorance and are never challenged with unpacking. So, like, even if I do reply, there's no acknowledgement of what I said to them. Um, I've seen enough people come and go that they claim to want to be my friend without having to do any of that work. So I just I don't have time for other people's bullshit at this time, and I'm just going to be kind of moving on. So needless to say, this Charlie Kirk thing showed me that Canadians are still hell-bent on silencing Indigenous and Black voices, folks with disabilities, to us LGBTQ in general as well. We've given them solutions on all of this. They've chose to ignore it, and instead are in the cycle of fascism and moving forward with their fascism at a greater and expedited course. I would even say we are in this moment where, for ever, Indigenous people have given solutions. We have the 1996 Royal Commission on Aboriginal Peoples. You hear me talk about RCAP regularly. We've given solutions. We've given solutions with the National Economic Indigenous Strategy, but instead they're reinventing the wheel. And to the applause of so many people, it's really sad and pathetic watching it. So if you don't see how Canada is fascist, like, obviously you're not going to hear that from me. That's something you need to learn about from obviously a different source. And when you're ready to learn about Indigenous perspective, we have books, we have podcasts, we have, social media shares, and you just exploit that and never pay anybody for it. And that's the worst part, is seeing how many people have done this labor for free and will never be properly compensated for any of it. Whereas if I was a white male, I would be. So I'm sad to say that people have really outed themselves as not just like it's not about being a Trump supporter. Charlie Kirk was one of his soldiers. He's the reason why they got the youth vote. He is just a Christian nationalist promoting hate and fascism. And we've seen that all over. I have given so many quotes of John A. MacDonald, of different royal family members that do this as well and have done this here in Canada. And yet it goes in one ear and out the other. So, as for the queer community, not hearing the 231 calls to justice as the centering of the solutions that have been available to Canadians now for years. So I just know that, like my ancestors who, spoke out, my ancestors who did the work and are still living, who did the work of RCAP, the ancestors that told their truth during the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and many have now passed. I will honor those voices always. And I understand and I want to continue to do that work, but I think it's going to be a private journey at this point for a while. And the reason for that, obviously, is that because Canadians and Americans, they don't want to get it, they are purposely committed to not getting it and come in bad faith. You see this Jimmy Kimmel lose his platform, and the only reason why anyone cares is because Disney's now losing billions of dollars for it. It's not because they actually care about fighting fascism. It's not because they care about the decline of free speech. It's not because that they've ever amplified a marginalized voice. They only want to amplify the voices that are calling on hate, division, and killing of marginalized people. Apparently tomorrow there's going to be some conversation about autism in the States, and I know a lot of folks who are neurodivergent are afraid. Don't blame them. I'm neurodivergent myself, but I've lived for 48 years like this. So I just know that at this point, I just don't think this new generation really understands it, that this Nick Fluentes make even exists. I'm sad. I'm sad for these demographics. Like I knew it was bad, and I had seen in the 9/11 truth movement all of these military industrial complex monies coming into the truther movement and then evolve into this, 4chan and Nick groupers bullshit nobody wanted to listen to. Nobody wanted to have meaningful conversations about it. And now we're here. Now we're here where people are being shot. And even yesterday at the legislature, I knew it was going to be the same crowd I see in Calgary, these 50 plus folks who protest everything. It's the same group of people. And that's what I seen up in Edmonton yesterday too. And it's frustrating because I know 99% of those people have really negative anti-Indigenous bias, and including a lot of the Indigenous people themselves who haven't unpacked colonialism, racism, and sexism and ableism from Canada. Like it's depressing having conversations with people when they themselves have not unpacked the danger that Indigenous women, especially in a situation like that, is speaking. But of course, we're in Canada. Of course, we never got shot and killed because we have gun control to some extent. I mean, I would argue it's not strong enough that right now intimate partner violence is so high that most women are going to be killed by their partner. That is just the statistical fact. And that's why so many women are always trying to work harder at some type of gun control, and why the military industrial complex continue to fight back at us. So I just unfortunately won't be able to do many more podcasts, if ever. The other thing, obviously, we learned from Jimmy Kimmel, and all of the updates we get on our social media apps, which I'm chronically online. We're seeing the pushing of the Charlie Kirk vigil today. We're seeing the pushing of MAGA. And that's done on purpose. That's done by all of our tech bras who are working with the Trump administration to, fuel hate and propaganda, and only allow government or Trump approved statements to be out there. So it is just a matter of time until content creators like me, who are already struggling in Canada because we don't make money off of any of our content, it was just a matter of time until we get kicked off the Spotify's, the podcasts in general. So even if I had the capacity and got paid money to do this work, I'm not convinced that this medium will be here at the end of my mom's healing journey, that I'll be able to continue doing this anyway. So there's multiple factors as to why this is unsustainable and never has been sustainable, and the lack of support. Like, I've been doing this for years. The lack of support has been evident. So I just wanted to let people know that may sound very sad, and it is very sad. And it's not like the solutions aren't in front of you. They have been in front of you. They're in your libraries. They're in the books. They're online for now until Google changes everything more. The solutions are there. The people, our Indigenous leaders, are there. What is it? Mr. Rogers says, always look to the helpers. Well, we've been out here helping. We've helped since the Mayflower. And Canadians and Americans have just spit and pissed all over any kind of friendship, treaty partnership that we could have had. They chose this. So, unfortunately, now they're in their own world of fascism that they're going to have to fight. And it sucks because, folks like me have been out here trying to teach people this is how you do it. And unfortunately, what I see more of is I see more people say, I can't. Well, that's why we're here, because you can't. If I, as a neurodivergent Native woman who's somehow, been able to get this far, if I can do it, why can't you? I was taught to hate myself. I was taught to hate my family. I was taught to hate my natives. I was taught to hate. This is from society. This is from media. This is from our education system. Yet somehow I was able to get out of that. So, with the deepest respect to people who are just like, oh my God, I just can't do this. That's on you, folks. I learned who our leaders were. I learned about the Indian Act. I learned about Indigenous governance. So yeah, I just think it's important that people understand the gravity of the moment we're in. We're in a war. We're in a global war. We're in a war on media, war on education, and you've kind of shown yourself as to what side of this war you're on. And what I would say is that that there is a need for people to look for the helpers, look for the leaders. I'm sad we are in this point in history for a lot of you to do this work, but it is what it is. So um, I say good luck to you all. I hope you find your path, and I hope you find the advocacy that you wanted so bad for your cause. And I wish one day you could see that if you looked at your cause rooted with an Indigenous lens, we would all succeed, including Black people, Asian people, any person of color in this country. They have their own anti-Indigenous bias to unpack. They have their own racism and colonialism to unpack, their settler bias to unpack as well. And I wish everybody would do that work. But we're here, and now Trump and the military industrial complex is just going crazy. And it's just a matter of time until a lot of these podcasts are all taken off. So I hope people know where to look for their helpers because it matters. And what I tried to say at the ledge yesterday to folks who looked at me with disdain, a lot of them looked at me with disdain and wouldn't agree with anything I had to say. I just kept quoting Star Wars, and we do have friends everywhere. And if you don't watch Endor season 1 and season 2, then you don't know what I'm saying. And even though you should have canceled your Disney Plus 2 years ago at the start of this Israel-Palestine conflict, you chose not to. So if you still have your Disney Plus, you better go watch Endor season 1 and season 2. And just remember that there's never an end to rebellion. I think it's important that we talk about Nepal. So, for folks who don't know, because your mainstream media did not want you to know this, this was not broadcast on any major networks, especially when it was happening. The youth of Nepal had had enough of the corruption happening in Nepal, and they burnt down their parliament. They were hunting all of their parliament officials. They killed the prime minister's wife. She burnt to death, apparently. And they all got on Discord and made a vote. And now they have a brand new government. And they themselves helped to clean up the streets. And they like literally did this within like 48 hours. It's such a great story of hope, of rebellion. And a lot of folks would love to see the US finally take down these billionaires and the military industrial complex and do that. But I don't know if we're going to see that because, they've purposely kept Americans ignorant for so long, Canadians too, really ignorant about who they are, where they come from, their nation building. It's all been a lie that they've happily ate up. And, now they're focusing on international trade outside of the States, in Canada here anyway. And, for all intents and purposes, that's why they voted in Mark Carney. And that's what they're getting on the backs of Indigenous people. And I have faith Canada's going to be just fine throughout all of this. I just know it'll be fine for settlers. It will never be fine for Canadians. I'm no longer sharing positive healthcare stories of Canada because that is only for a very few select people. Affluent, white settlers, they get good healthcare, not anyone else in this country. So my hope is that people will start to see these are lies that you're being taught, that if you're resharing these lies, that you are resharing lies. You are part of the problem, not part of the solution. And I see that regularly. There's a real effort to get rid of any media that's like mine. There's going to be a real effort. You're going to see that with all of the folks that we don't consider allies enough. And they're going to start suppressing more of the media in general. So folks like me, I know we're going to get pushed out, but as a Canadian content creator, I've always been pushed out. We've never gotten the, money that you would get as an American. We actually even talked about possibly moving to the States just so I could do TikTok content creation and possibly get paid for it as opposed to in Canada. But I just think that'd be stupid. And then obviously I'm glad we never followed through on any of that thinking because of the insanity that's happening in the States right now. I would never subject anyone to that. In fact, I wish we had more American refugees coming up to Canada. But the truth is, in Canada, in Alberta, in Calgary, this is the epicenter. For folks who don't know, like Danielle Smith went to Trump's inauguration. She's been down a few times to, basically create relations with him. I wanted to say very derogatory things there, but they're offering Danielle Smith and the UCP money in loans for Alberta to become the 51st state. So in my opinion, that's the acts of a traitor for her to go down there and for her to continue that conversation. So I'm just going to say with Forever Canadian, I finally became a canvasser. Finally, I struggled with their media, their software. And so when I went on my computer, I was finally able to become a canvasser. It didn't work on my phone. In fact, none of their media works on my phone. So I don't think that's a coincidence. Finally got my canvasser. I've collected a few signatures already. And I wish I would have been able to do more, but it is what it is. As you all know, my life has been on hold since April because of my mom's surgery. And my mom literally has nobody to take care of her other than me. So I'm struggling with that just personally because, we've tried to get her to move closer and she refuses. So I have to go out of town and help her and not be in my not be with my family as a stay-at-home mom, not be with my dogs, not be with my husband, not be with my daughter. And so this is going to be very difficult in a really like she's she and my uncle live together. My uncle went to residential school, so it'll be interesting to see how long it takes me to recover from that as well. And that's my reality. That's how it works. That's the reality of Indigenous people. That's assuming the surgery even goes well. I'm just going to be asking folks who do pray that you put some effort into praying for this doctor to be kind to my daughter and all of the medical staff to be kind. But I know what Indigenous women are treated like. And especially, we have intergenerational health effects. I have intergenerational health effects. She has intergenerational health effects. And Canada not only doesn't even acknowledge that, they continue with their anti Indigenous racism against us. Hence why I did so many podcasts with Corey Ashley talking about Lily and Ashley being killed in the hospital in Hannah. I know this doesn't matter to Canadians. Their lack of empathy and their hate that we had seen during just this Charlie Kirk moment. They don't have that empathy, compassion, and understanding for Indigenous people. I was at the legislature and I seen it in the crowd. There were a lot of people that had nothing but hate in their hearts as they looked at me with their crossed arms. And nobody called them out on that. Nobody. And these folks who organize the event, they're new to organizing. So, of course, they wouldn't see that because they have so much on their plate. And it's hard because I'm seeing new folks trying to reinvent the wheel, knowing these are the folks that have always been doing this work and, been harmful to me as a Native woman, but also I wanted to give a shout out to Taz up in Edmonton. She tried to be a canvasser for this Forever Canadian. And yeah, I talked to her. It's her story to tell. But at the end of the day, I just, it hurt my heart hearing how she felt going through it. And I will say this as a person who believes in treaty. The reason why I chose to become a canvasser was because treaties are international law. Canadians don't know that. They don't care. They will never care. I don't know if there's ever going to be a meaningful K to 12 program, let alone civics in general, seeing where we're at right now. But regardless, treaty is international law. So these lands are ours. One day, I don't want to have to go through what the Palestinians are going through right now. We have already gone through what the Palestinians went through, and a lot of the supporters here in Canada just went la 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 when it came to, hey, did you know that you are Israel to me as an Indigenous person in Canada? They just didn't want to see that, and they didn't want to, put effort towards unpacking that. So I'm happy for them that Mark Carney is recognizing Palestine, but I think we all are on the same page that this is bullshit. There should never be a recognition of the state of Israel. That is an invented, made up term by the British, by the Balfour Declaration. And the Jewish population, the Christian population, and the Muslim population, these three these three religions come from that same area. We should have canceled Christmas when, Israel was bombing the Catholic churches there. The last pope who hurt my people and apologized to my people as part of that institution of hurting my people, even he was on the side of Palestinians. So it's just like I can't wrap my head around the hypocrisy of people who say I'm so with you, but don't have history, don't have the understanding of fascism, don't understand what fascism here is in Canada, let alone globally, let alone in America. And I wish people seen that this canvassing is a stupid thing that we're talking about instead of the bigger picture of reconciliation and fascism and how that's all interconnected. So I was a canvasser. We have very strict ways that we have to hand in our sheets of paper, which I will do before my mom's surgery. I will hand back my canvasser thing that I only had for a few days, really, and that unfortunately will be mine contribution to trying to maintain the treaty that we have. To me, it's deplorable that government of Canada, the government of Alberta have infinite amounts of financial resources to use in courts against me and my people. And we weren't even allowed to have lawyers until the 70s. So we have so many backlogged land claims. We have so much legal work that needs to be done that we just haven't been able to do. And we have a Canadian public who's completely ignorant, just like the Americans are, of their fascism. So this just perpetuates and perpetuates and perpetuates. So for me, trying to be that canvasser was to try to reduce the amount of taxpayer money being wasted to a stupid cause that Danielle Smith is happy to do, whether it's against trans people, whether it's against Indigenous people, whether it's against Canada, happy to continue and perpetuate that colonial harm against folks like me. And Canadians are A-okay with it because they've been taught to hate me my entire life. So that is why I was a canvasser. I tried to be. And I wish I could have done more with that, but it just didn't work out with my mom's surgery that our life has been on hold since April waiting for. Um, that story about the Nepal revolution, the funniest part about it, like the whole thing is just the best Star Wars episode they could have ever made out of thin air. But the best part of it was there was this British TikTok influencer and he just happened to be there for the one day of the revolution and had TikTok content showing this. And it was one of our only sources of media that we ended up having on it. So if you get a chance to go to We Hate the Cold on TikTok, funniest TikToks you will ever see in your entire life, watching a live revolution and ending within what, 48 hours. Like it was such a sign of hope. And in any rebellion, you need hope. Never forget about Nepal being able to do that. And yeah, I wish Americans and Canadians got it, but they, yay, Christianity. I accept Jesus into my heart. Don't kill me. Not good enough, dumb native. That's how the way they look at things. So. On TikTok, I started a municipal elections playlist. I asked through the Reconciliation Action Group, like we wanted to ask 30 questions, but getting a politician to answer one has been hell. Like I have to have a video conference with one candidate. I already had an hour-long conversation with another because they won't reply other than, would you be willing to meet with me? Again, if you watched my last TikTok, I just put up 5-minute video talking about the exploitation and you know, of Indigenous people, extracting knowledge, extracting info without payment. And of course, I just give it to them in the hopes that just maybe something I said will go through. I have this personal belief, and it's actually thanks to teachers and sociology, psychology. And it's that if you teach the same thing 7 times to someone in slightly different ways, eventually they may understand a concept. I don't know if that's working in Canada, frankly. I know I'm lucky enough to have taught my daughter about fascism, reconciliation, colonialism enough that a lot of these concepts that she was taught in school, not only did she already hear about, but she was able to hear pieces that they were teaching that I missed in some capacity. And so has been taught fascism in school, but it really resonated with her because we had been talking about it for so long anyway. But for so many Canadian kids, not only did they not get it, but like she had a classmate that I feel would be like the shooter, like the grouper people, because they called her the enemy, her the problem. Because here you have a Indigenous lesbian, cottagecore girl being her sweet self. And that's such a threat to this little army cadet white nationalist who watches obviously a Charlie Kirk and Nick Fuentes or whatever his stupid fucking name is. These are the folks that they're following and targeting folks like me and my daughter. And it's a really unfortunate fact. This is where we are as a society. Now, I've always known if I was quiet and I kept my mouth shut and I didn't cause any problems, I would still be at a high risk of being murdered, not looked at, my murder not properly investigated, because this is Canada's society and it's a-okay to kill Indigenous people and get away with it. It always has been. I pray Canadians would do more to change it, but I mean, it's been 10 years since the TRC's come out, and most people don't know what that is, let alone the 231 calls to justice, let alone the 107 calls to prosperity of the National Economic Indigenous Strategy. We've given the solutions. Our cap had so much information in it. The United Nations Declaration of Rights of Indigenous People, like that's an international document with our elders and elders from all across the globe talking about Indigenous rights. And again, I don't have a lot of capacity for a lot of things. So, unfortunately, if you don't follow me on TikTok or if I've blocked you, tough titty, I'll update my, YouTube a bit. I'm not as good as updating all the socials anymore because I know they're controlled. I know they're limited. I know my algorithms are being suppressed and have been for well over 2 years. And Canadians accept that. They're okay with that. So there's not much I can do about it. And I don't have the capacity anymore to do a lot more. So I will be doing the book club. I Was a Teenage Slasher by Stephen Graham Jones is our next book. And I do plan on being there, even though it'll be a week post-op. But I will also have a contingency plan just in case. I absolutely cannot be there. So, or I just lose track of time. I suspect I'm going to lose track of time. So with that, I say thank you to those who did bother to share a podcast, listen to a podcast, donate, whether it was $1, especially for folks who followed our issue from Lethbridge. I want to tell you a quick, lovely story. I bumped into Giancarlo Corra at the USAY opening, which I was going to save for the end of my podcast and and explain the gravity of that. But I seen him there, and he and I talked, and it was just wonderful to meet up with him again because he's not online and he's going to be retiring. And I just wanted Calgarians, especially, to know because he's not rerunning, he was named deputy mayor until the end of the term here when the election really starts. And the last session is there. And yeah, I've had a long history with him, and I had so much hope for democracy and change. And he was one of my supporters. Canter was one of my supporters. Um, and it just feels so different 15 years ago to today. 15 years ago, people didn't even know Indigenous people existed. Uh, DRC wasn't out, and we were already dealing with people who were denying the gravity of what residential schools were. And he was listening, and especially after meeting the St. Albert mayor that I was talking about earlier in the podcast, knowing he's done some work, so much more than others, willing to do that work. And I just wish more people were willing to do that work as in positions of power. So he really does appreciate being deputy mayor and just being able to enjoy Calgary in the last couple of weeks of doing this work. And so it was really wonderful to kind of be with him in that moment, knowing all we've been through in the last 15 years as a democracy and having all this hope that Canadians were ready for meaningful reconciliation and meaningful Indigenous inclusion and meaningful, anti-Black understanding going through George Floyd. But the last pushback in the last couple of years has been so intense. And obviously, I hope the whole podcast gave you an idea of what I see coming, that you probably will never hear from me again, not because I don't want that, just because that's the gravity of the situation we're in with the tech bras in charge of all of these apps and media. Now I know I've tried to slip through the cracks, and I think I did a pretty good job for the most part. But you know what? It's not sustainable to do this work. It never has been. I know that the podcast summit wrapped up yesterday here in Calgary, and I never did attend it because I knew I had to go to the legislature, and I knew I couldn't commit to being to the entire thing anyway. And I actually find it very hard to be at, settler-centered events. I find that they exclude marginalized voices on purpose, and they have a different goal. They come to these with this goal of making money, and I've never come to this with the goal of making money. I had faith that, because I come in good faith, my followers would donate enough for me to be able to sustain this. But my husband's had no job for a year. We can't sustain this anymore. This world has become so wild that it is clear white males, straight white males, are the ones being amplified. So it is what it is. I enjoyed doing this while I could for my own healing. I loved doing this podcast. And I hope after the surgery and we've given all the book clubs onto the podcast that I'll have capacity to continue doing a weekly podcast. And I hope that I still have listeners at the end of it. But I can't promise that. I may have to try to reinvent something, because any of the podcast funding that is available is usually for new projects. And this is considered an old project because I've been doing it for so many years. So I'll have to reframe that and figure that out at a later time. But after my mom's done healing, I'm done healing, and our family is healthy enough for me to move on to that world. So I just say thank you all for listening. It's been my pleasure being the host of Native Calgarian for this long. I hope you consider following me on social medias that you feel ethical about following, and maybe join the book club, maybe help the Reconciliation Action Group or start a similar group like that in your area. Masi Cho to my ancestors, to my granny, to my mom, of what strength looks like through your example. I want to thank my dad for teaching me to be strong and blunt, my stepmom for showing me her proud Austrian culture. I want to say thank you to my husband, Darcy. He has been trying to weather the storm since COVID, and I don't understand this world anymore. He doesn't, we don't. We're struggling with our mental health, but yet he still wants to produce my podcasts. He does an amazing editing of the show. When I say that, I listen to other podcasts and they're so shitty with their sound quality that I'm turning it up, turning it down, turning it up, turning it down. Darcy, he knows how to do this work. He's so good at it. And you don't have that issue because of his fantastic work. So he's not just my husband. He's just a fan-fucking-tastic editor on this. And I'm so proud of him. My child, I am so proud to be your mom. You teach me every day to be a better and stronger person, to daily accountability. And I just hope the entire family understands why I tried to do this podcast. I honor the Blackfoot. The elders have been so kind to me on my Red Road journey. Elder Red Crane taught me how to pronounce my spirit name. Leonard Kenny taught me how to pronounce it in Satu Dene. My humblest apologies to language keepers as I try to learn proper pronunciation. My Patreon account is Native Calgarian, where you can pledge and support. Thank you, previous donors, for showing your support. If you value listening or watching and can afford to give, thank you. For those who cannot afford to give, I'd love to hear from you at nativeyyc@gmail.com, where you can send in your comments or questions. I have a YouTube channel. You can go and subscribe. I'm on all the social medias, or you can go to nativecalgarian.com for the latest podcasts and pin posts on social media. Last thing I always want to do is this touch grass moment, and I just want to give a shout out to you, Say. What does you say, you may ask? It is an organization for Indigenous youth here in Calgary. And they finally, and I'm really quite proud of this as a Trudeau Liberal. I know where their funding came from and all of the hard work the executive director did to get more funding from more people and all of the things that had finally happened for USAY to have a building and a grand opening. And it was beautiful. And every native my age or older that was there, we all talked about how great it would have been to have a USAY in our lifetime, to be proud of who you are. And I'm proud of all the things I've ever seen from USAY. And I'm really grateful that they have a building. And that I hope they never get taken over by white people because they're doing the best work I've ever seen for Indigenous youth. And settlers should learn from them as opposed to take from them. And I've always been afraid to talk about USAY on this podcast for that exact reason. Because if there's one thing colonizers know how to do, it's how to wreck a good thing. And I hope that never happens for USAY because they are amazing, amazing people trying to uplift Indigenous youth. And I know the Prime Minister that cared about it at the time would have wanted that. So I just find it interesting. He'll never see the fruits of some of his labor. And same with the folks that made that happen. But I'm really proud of them. It's a beautiful place. And I hope that all Indigenous youth across this country get the proper investment into their life that they should, because they deserve it. So, with that, thank you folks for listening.